If you are looking for the dark chocolate tasting experience tonight, you are in the right Zoom room. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, we'd love to do a poll at the beginning to see where you all are from. And hold on, I gotta put on my glasses. It looks like, wow, you guys are from all over today. Thank you so much. Looks like we've got a lot here in the West Coast and the Southwest, which is to be expected because we're pretty popular right here, but we love seeing the rest of you from different parts of the country. So thank you so much. Hi guys, I am Lisa Vannerson and I will be your host for tonight. I am here to just say a couple of things, the only thing standing in between you and your chocolate, so I'll try to go fast. But the first thing is, sorry about that, we're trying something a little new, I'm going to be honest, so if it goes back and forth, please have patience with us. We're just trying something new to improve the experience every time. The first thing I was just going to mention is that if you've been to our tasting room in Las Vegas, Nevada, or in Glendale, California, you know what a fun experience this is going to be. But the one big difference is that we can't be in person all together. So we have, unfortunately, had to mute and put all of your audio and video down so that we can't see or hear you, only because we want to make sure everyone has the best experience possible and there's no background noise for anyone. So if you do have a question, which we encourage, please use the Q&A button down at the bottom, and I will try my best to answer those as quickly as I can. And those that I can't answer, I'll be taking notes and we'll get with Mark Mackey at the end of the experience for him to answer for you. So do also note that we will not be monitoring the raise hand or chat functions, only because it's just me and Mark and Stu and the three of us together have a lot going on and can't get to all that. So thank you for understanding. We normally would all be together and we love to see and hear your questions and all have fun. But the one thing, well, obviously that's standing in our way is everything that's happening with COVID. So if you are going to share any photos, please make sure, we'd love to see you on social media, please make sure to tag us in those with either @EthelMChocolates or #EthelMChocolates. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and move on to opening this up, getting started. All right, so if you've been into our tasting before, you know some of this, so I apologize if it's a repeat. But for those of you who are new, I wanted to take a few minutes and tell you about our company. So we were founded in 1981 by Forrest Mars Sr. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a portrait of Forrest that was several years ago. So upon his retirement from the M&M Mars company that he built with his father, Frank, Forrest moved to the West Coast in search of warmer climates. And he ended up just outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, where we are here in Henderson, Nevada. And ended up buying some land and opened a store, a factory, and a cactus garden that we'll talk about in a minute. But the best about it was that Forrest actually also built himself an apartment above the store and the factory so that he could be there hands-on to help teach the craft of these handmade chocolates that he had made with his mother growing up in Tacoma, Washington as a boy. So Ethel M was the name of his mother, and he built all of this in her honor upon his retirement, which is a neat story. He's also a very avid gardener, and as you can see from a few of these photos here, our cactus garden is spectacular. We have 3 acres of it that surround our store and our factory, and it just actually finished blooming, and I'm so sorry about that because I know we've been closed and no one could come out and see it, but you do see a few of the pictures there to show you just a few of the over 300 species of Southwest plants that we have in the botanical garden. It's really quite lovely, and if you ever have a chance, it's free and open to the public, and we would encourage you to come out and check it out. At the holidays, it's always another fun time to come check it out. In November and December, we take over 1 million LED lights, and we light up the whole thing with different colored Christmas lights. And you can see in the center bottom there, that's a view looking at the store, but it's just gorgeous. That saguaro cactus has the red lights on it, and there's all sorts of different colored lights throughout that are just really captivating and draws people from near and far. The other thing that's pretty fun is that a couple of years ago, if you are familiar with the show Tanked on Animal Planet,
those fellows are here in town, and they called and asked if they could come build us a fish tank, an aquarium for the season. So on the far right, you'll see that was our finished aquarium, and then you'll see a picture of the glowfish that were in it. And it was just stunning. The episode is still on YouTube. If you are interested, go out and Google tanked Ethel and you can take a look. And the final point, just before we move on, is that all of us here at are very concerned about our environment and just play a key role in making sure sustainability is at the forefront of everything we do. So in the bottom left, you'll see a picture of our 4-acre solar garden that's right here on site. It's really amazing. And because we get so much sun here in Vegas, we can produce enough energy to power the entire plant during peak production hours. So I always love to say it's not only a chocolate that tastes good, but that it's doing good as well for the environment. So with that, I am not going to stand in your way anymore. I'm going to turn this over to Mark Mackey. If any of you have done these in the past, you're familiar with Mark. He's our chief chocolatier here at LM. He comes to us from the Culinary Institute of America in New York. He lives here in Vegas, obviously. And I always say the coolest thing that no one else can say that I know is that Mark holds US and international patents for his work on improvements to the texture and shelf life of chocolate. So with that, I will sit back. I'd ask you guys to sit back, relax, have fun, and post pictures and tag us if you don't mind.
Hey everybody, how's everybody doing tonight? Hopefully we have everybody with us. I'm Mark Mackey, and I'm really excited to be with you all again tonight for our 4th virtual chocolate tasting. We're going to be tasting some delicious chocolates. Hopefully you have your boxes nearby, and tasting and also learning a little bit about where chocolate comes from as well, and the journey that this little thing right here, this cocoa bean, takes from the cocoa bean all the way into the delicious chocolates that you see in front of you. So why don't we get started, and we'll jump right into our first piece. So during our tasting tonight, we're going to be doing more than just eating delicious chocolate. We're going to be using all of our senses to evaluate each piece, from picking it up and touching it, smelling it, evaluating the flavor, the texture, the aftertaste, or the finish. So let's start with this piece here. This is, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's a dark chocolate cover. Obviously, all of our pieces tonight are dark chocolate. Go ahead and pick up this guy right here, okay? So what do we see here? So we see, you know, obviously we got our beautiful FLM dark chocolate on here. We've also got a little bit of a drizzle on top. It's going to give us a little bit of additional texture. Now let's bring it up to our nose. So what I like to do when I smell a piece, actually, you know, if it's got a rounded top like this, sometimes I like to come and flip it over onto the bottom, the flat side, and then kind of like rub it a little bit. That's going to activate some of the aroma compounds, going to soften the chocolate a little bit, and you know, kind of enhance or heighten those aromas. So let's do that. Let's bring it up to our nose, smell a little bit, maybe rub it, activate again those aroma compounds. What are we smelling? So you should be getting a little bit of roasted, obviously dark chocolate, roasted cocoa beans. And if you try, you might get a little bit of like some perfuminess, maybe a little bit of fruity, floral, tropical floral kind of coming through a little bit. All right, now let's take a bite. See that white center there? Really nice thin coating of dark chocolate. Take a bite, chew a little bit, use your tongue and kind of press the piece up against the roof of your mouth. It'll start getting everything melting together nicely. What are we tasting? Tropical, a little bit of nuttiness coming through, fruity, floral, coconut. Then that dark chocolate's going to melt a little bit. It's going to provide a little bit more richness, a little bitterness to that tropical sweetness. It's just a nice thin amount of dark chocolate, so it's not going to overpower the piece too much. It's going to give us just a really nice bitterness there. And this is our dark chocolate coconut delight. Really nice coconut flavor there coming through. And then as it melts, you know, you'll kind of get a nice little aftertaste, a little sweetness, a little bit of that perfuminess or tropical fruit coming in from the coconut. And then maybe just a little bit of bitterness there at the end. So tonight, when we taste our chocolates, and we have some delicious pieces planned for you, you know, what's really important is to slow down. We really want to evaluate each piece, really think about everything that we're smelling, that we're tasting, you know, the textures, all those elements are really going to come together and provide for a really great experience. And I think you'll find that, you know, by doing that, by really slowing down, you're really going to be able to appreciate the chocolate a lot more and really, you know, get a nice feel for everything that's that you're tasting and you're experiencing. All right, so let's look down. Hopefully you have your placemats here on the backside. On the left side of the placemat here, you're going to see a little flavor wheel or aroma wheel. And this has, you know, basically all of the flavor categories and flavors that we have in aromas that we have in chocolate. And, you know, on here we have some common things that you might be aware of, things that like cocoa, obviously, maybe some, you know, perfumey notes we just talked about, honey, butterscotch, you know, all pretty common things. And then you see over here in the earthy category and you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I've got grass, wood, leather, tobacco. And, you know, you may not necessarily think, oh, I want my top chocolate to taste like that, you know, but this not only encompasses primary flavors and kind of the most like forefront or you know, primary flavors, but also the background flavors and some of those things that kind of come in the background and, you know, they might be present in just a small amount. And while they're not too powerful, they can really help to enhance our tasting experience, really provide a richness or a little more complexity to the chocolate. So be thinking about that as well when we go through the tasting tonight. And also, you know, everybody's tastes are different. And so, you know, while you might be picking up on a certain aroma or flavor, you know, your friend or your family member next to you might be picking up on something a little different. And that's totally okay. You know, we're all different, and that's what makes us great. And so share those thoughts and different flavors and things that you're trying or that you're experiencing, you know, with your friend or family member. I think it'll help to enrich the experience a little bit. And also optional in our factory chocolate tasting, something that we offer is an optional wine pairing. So when I like to pair wines with chocolates, you know, typically I like to select a wine that, you know, has a little more juice, a little fruity, fruit forward, jammy, some like to say. You know, typically I don't like something that's too heavy, too tannic, too full body, because sometimes that can actually overpower the chocolate. And you know, you want something that's going to complement it nicely, kind of play nicely with the chocolate, and allow it to kind of play off each other, you know, the chocolate and the wine, and, you know, really change the flavor and in your mouth and give you a really neat and different experience. So tonight, you know, I've picked a different wine for every tasting, but typically, you know, you want to select something like a Pinot Noir, you know, maybe a Chianti Classico from Tuscany. You know, there are a few others. There are some Merlots and Zinfandels that work nicely. But basically, if you're in the wine store, you know, you just ask the representative or the associate in there. And you want something that's a little more fruity, fruit forward, jammy, juicy, and they should be able to point you in the right direction. Another great choice here, if you like something a little sweet and sparkling, this is something called Brachetto d'Acqui right here. So this is actually a lightly sparkling wine. It's a little sweet. It's about 7% alcohol, and it's really, really nice. It gives a nice little effervescence to the wine, to the chocolate as well. And it's really nice, a little bit sweet and not too overpowering. It's something a little bit different that works as well. And the wine that I have tonight, so this is a Pinot Noir. It's from the Druhin Vineyards in Oregon, in Dundee Hills, Oregon. And this is it's called Rose Rock. They have a number of different Pinot Noirs, but Really, Druhin, Oregon, domain Druhin is what you want to remember. Pinot Noir. And Dundee Hills, also they have a vineyard here in Eola Amity Hills in Oregon. Oregon has a lot of great Pinot Noirs, as does Sonoma, Washington State, where I'm from as well, some great Pinot Noirs from there. So we'll be trying that tonight. And yeah, so, you know, I think if you have your wine, maybe pour a little bit, you can enjoy a little bit while I talk to you and share with you a little bit about where chocolate comes from and kind of, again, that process that we take from the cocoa bean all the way to the finished chocolate that you have in front of you. And I'm going to break up the process a bit. We're going to taste some chocolate. We'll go back to some of the process to kind of give our taste buds a little bit of a break, and we'll refresh and reset for the next piece. All right, so all chocolate and these cocoa beans, like I shared with you, they start out from a pod, which grows only about 20 degrees north and south of the equator. It really requires a tropical, you know, very damp environment and hot as well. And so, you know, typically we get beans from these areas. Ethel, we use a very specific set of specialty cocoa beans that come to us from Ecuador, Brazil, and West Africa. And, you know, cocoa pods are actually the fruit of the cocoa plant or the cocoa tree. And if you think about this as being the fruit, something that's kind of unique is that it grows not only on the branches of the tree, but actually on the trunk as well, as you can see there in that photo. It's kind of unique and different, being a fruit. You know, you don't see a lot of fruits that grow on the trunks of the tree in which they grow. And something else, you know, basically this entire first segment or first, you know, few process steps of cocoa growing and harvesting is done by hand. You know, from the growing, from the actual harvesting, the cutting, the, you know, processing of the beans, fermentation, all of that, you know, it's all done by hand, which is really quite remarkable when you think about all the chocolate that's out there in the world and the fact that it's all being handmade, you know, for those earlier steps. So something really, really unique and different. And actually, what I'd like to do now is show you a quick video. It's going to kind of bring that to life a little bit. You're going to see some farmers cutting some pods off the tree, cutting open the pods. Hopefully the video is not too choppy there, but you see he's harvesting those cocoa pods off the tree. Now they're sitting around, they've got their machete, and they're going to cut open those cocoa pods. And what's inside? Not what you would probably think when you think of chocolate, but something else. It's the cocoa bean, but it's actually covered in a white, kind of acidic, fruity pulp that serves a very, very important purpose. So I have here, this is actually a fresh Ecuadorian cocoa pod, and I'm going to cut this open and show you exactly what it looks like. So I don't have a machete, but I've got a chef's knife here in my kitchen, and I'm going to cut this guy. Oh, this is actually great because you can kind of see the inside there. So see how thick that hull is, really protecting those cocoa. And actually, I did a great job because I actually sliced a bean right in half. So this is great to show you. That's actually a kind of a a cross section of a bean. And you can see it's really nice and purple. That's coming from the flavanols and polyphenols in the cocoa itself. Now that's something that we want to keep. And also when we process the chocolate through fermentation, you're going to see that change colors here in a second. So here, I'm going to dump these out inside of this pot. So I'll kind of show you guys what that looks like. Just kind of scooping out the pod here, beans. Unfortunately, it's not like the Food Network. I don't have one already cut open, but here. You can kind of see that. So those are the beans. Really neat, really different. Again, not something that you would probably think of when you think of chocolate. So this white pulp here, this actually provides a really important, serves a very important purpose in the chocolate making process. It's going to help promote fermentation. So this is really sweet. It's sweet and slightly acidic. It has kind of like a little bit of a pineapple, like a lychee flavor to it. And again, it's going to help us ferment. And what fermentation is going to do is these sugars in here are going to break down, and it's going to create heat in the bean, and it's actually going to develop a lot of the fruity, floral, and complex notes in the bean and help us develop a lot of great flavor. All right, so basically that takes about 7 days to fully ferment. And back at the slide, we actually have a photo of those beans kind of fermenting a little bit. You can see the farmer has actually been kind of moving those around a little bit. The third photo in here. So you can see those have been fermenting for probably about 4 or 5 days. They've started to turn kind of brown. Some of that moisture is kind of being driven off, and those are fermenting. And then once the fermentation is complete, then we're going to dry everything out. We're going to want to get all that extra moisture off the bean. We don't want any mold to grow on these beans. We want to dry that out once the fermentation is done. And then that's really when they're going to get bagged up and sent to us in the United States for roasting. So I think this is a great time to jump back into tasting some chocolate. And what we'll do here, well, actually, no, let's do something a little different. Let's try 2 pieces. They are a little similar sounding, but I think you'll find that they are quite a bit different in not just the flavor, but the experience as well in the melt profile. So let's pick up this piece here. This is our sea salt caramel. And then we'll have our other piece, which is this guy. This is our creamy caramel right here. It's got a really nice, beautiful, welcome to beautiful Las Vegas, or fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada design on the front of that. Pick up those pieces. So both of these are caramels, and they're going to start out in our candy kitchen, and they're going to be caramel, or they'll start out with sugar that we're going to caramelize in our copper kettles. And you know, they both start out kind of similarly. We're going to caramelize the sugar. We're going to add cream. We're going to add a little bit of butter, salt, and tenfold vanilla extract. And that's really going to round out the flavors and really give us a really nice background of vanilla. We use a tenfold vanilla extract, which is quite different than the vanilla extract that you find in the grocery store. It contains 10 times the amount of vanilla bean or vanilla bean solids as the regular vanilla extract. So it's really potent and really gives us a nice, really nice, well-rounded vanilla note to our chocolate. So for the sea salted caramel, this is where the process is going to change depending on what we're making. So for this sea salted caramel, we're actually going to take that caramel, we're going to heat it up to 239 degrees, and then we're going to pour it out onto our metal cooling tables to set perfectly, and hand cut each into squares, which we're going to coat in some delicious Ethel dark chocolate, as you can see there. And then each piece is going to get a perfect sprinkle of French gray sea salt on top. And we call it gray sea salt because it actually gets the gray color from the clay where it grows, or it crystallizes. So this comes to us from Brittany, France, and there's a lot of clay in the bay there where this salt comes from, and so the salt takes on that gray color. So that's for our sea salt caramel. So for our creamy caramel, this guy, we're going to take that caramel and we're going to add something called invert sugar and a little bit more cream and butter. And what that's going to do is it's going to help keep the caramel liquid. And so when it cools, it's still a nice liquid. And we're going to deposit that along with the chocolate in our single shot depositor. And what that does is it takes the caramel in one hopper and the chocolate in the other and deposits them together in the mold so that in one shot, you actually have your finished piece that's molded. And you may have mentioned it a second ago, you've got that welcome to Las Vegas kind of colored cocoa butter logo there. So this is actually colored cocoa butter, food grade, that has, we use it kind of like an ink. So we actually apply it to the piece there, and then the chocolate will kind of take that design right onto the piece. All right, so let's go ahead. We'll start with our sea salt caramel. Let's pick this guy up. So let's look at it. What do we see? It's a little glossy, a little bit of that gloss. Got that texture from the sea salt on top. Now let's flip it over and smell. Should be getting some of those nice, deep cocoa, roasted cocoa notes. Maybe some coffee as well. Now, hopefully you have your piece upside down. If you don't, flip the piece so the salt is facing down, and then take a bite and try to keep the salt on your tongue, and we're gonna let it melt before we chew the piece. Nice creamy caramel there. So just kind of let it sit on your tongue. The salt's gonna melt. Kind of rub your tongue a little bit until the salt's gone. And then chew that delicious chocolate. Bitterness coming from the roasted cocoa. A little bit of that salinity from the salt mixing with the chocolate. And then the caramel's gonna melt. Bring some butter, cream, vanilla. If you have some wine, swirl your glass a little bit, aerate that wine slightly. I like to do the same thing, you know, kind of smell the wine, you know, kind of smell, get a feel for, you know, what the wine's going to taste like a little bit through the aroma. I like to slurp a little bit. That brings some air across your tongue, aerates the wine a little bit more in your mouth, and kind of, again, activates or enhances some of those fruity flavors in the wine. And think about, how is the flavor of that caramel changing? How is that butteriness, the creaminess, the dark chocolate changing with that wine? And again, this is why, you know, we want something that's a little bit fruitier, or maybe a little bit medium bodied, we'd say. We don't want something that's too overpowering. We don't want to have all this bitterness come in and overpower the chocolate. It's really nice. Something as well, so we, with our dark chocolate, you might have picked up on, you know, we have something called a citrus blossom. So we actually add a little bit of orange oil to our dark chocolate. It makes it quite unique, and really like it. It's not enough that you would necessarily say, oh, this tastes like orange, but if you think about it, you can get it kind of in the background a little bit. It's a nice background flavor, background note. All right, let's pick up our creamy caramel here. So we'll take a look at this. This one looks a little glossier than the last one. This is a molded piece, so that means, you know, it sets up in the mold and it's not exposed to the air. So typically that means the piece will be a little shinier because of that. Bring it up to our nose. This one's going to be a little stronger smelling. You're going to have a stronger chocolate note, roasted cocoa coming through. And that's because the layer, the shell of this piece is a bit thicker than the sea salt caramel that we just tried. Let's take a bite and listen for the snap that you're going to hear when you bite into this. Get that caramel. Chew a little bit, press it up against the roof of your mouth, and right away you get that buttery, creamy caramel melting. A little bit of salt coming through. And then the dark chocolate's going to melt and provide some more of that bitterness and richness to complement the caramel. Caramelized sugar, some of that citrus blossom, the coffee and espresso notes coming through as well. So, you know, really, they are kind of similar, but if you think about it, they are a little bit different. So the sea salt caramel, we tasted that, we got the salt and we got the chocolate first, and then the caramel kind of came into the background. But the creamy caramel tasted that, we got the caramel first because it was liquid, coated our palate, melted nicely, and then the dark chocolate kind of came into the background and kind of enhanced that flavor a little bit and gave us a little bit of that really nice roasted cocoa and bitterness as well. So again, a little bit different. I'd love to hear about which one you preferred with that. And if you'd like as well, go ahead and have a sip of wine, take another bite of the chocolate, and think about how that flavor is changing in your mouth a little bit. Again, you want to take your time. I mean, the one thing, tasting great chocolate, you'll find that you can really, you know, through a couple, like 1 or 2 pieces, you take your time and very slow, like you almost feel like you've had, you know, an incredible dessert, or, you know, you've had this amazing experience and you've only had like a couple of pieces. It really helps to make for a much better experience, I think. Okay. You can see some photos here. You see the sea salt caramels with the hand sprinkling of the salt there, and the caramel being poured out onto our cooling tables. All right. If you'd like to capture any notes on that one, feel free to jot those down. And now, I think we will celebrate some anniversaries. Got a few sweet moments for some folks here. So Kat and Matt, happy 5th year wedding anniversary in August. Cheers to you guys. We have Ben and Aaron Matthew. Happy 18th wedding anniversary for you guys. Hope you have a wonderful night. And Jeff and Amy, 32nd anniversary of your first date. That's incredible. I hope you guys have a wonderful night, wonderful weekend. Cheers to you. All right. Kind of let that last piece kind of clear our mouth a little bit. If you'd like, take a drink of water, cleanse your palate a little bit. Or wine works as well. All right, and we'll move on to our next piece of the night, which is our raspberry satin cream. So this piece, you can see a great photo of the center of this piece being made. So, you know, all of our satin creams, for our vanilla satin cream, raspberry satin cream, lemon satin cream, chocolate, they all start out really the same way. Excuse me. They start out, you know, with a mixture of cream, sugar, and butter. We heat all that up into a syrup, into like a heated mixture. And then we cool it down in something called a cream beater. So you can see here, it kind of looks a little bit like a mixer for like taffy. I mean, kind of, not really, I guess, but a little bit. But what this is doing is we're going to take that hot mixture, and we're going to pour it into this vessel here, this big bowl essentially, and it's going to cool, and we're going to crystallize the sugar really, really slowly, and we're going to mix that at the right temperature so that we develop very, very small sugar crystals in our satin cream center. So what that's going to do is melt really nicely on our tongue and give us that signature Ethel satin cream experience. And it's at this point, typically, once we've done that mixing, that's going to cool from about, you know, a little over 200 degrees down to about 100, 105. And then we're going to turn those mixers on. That's going to mix down to about 80, 85 degrees. And that's when we're going to add our, in this case, raspberry. We're going to add Oregon raspberries to that. And that's going to mix in, kind of cool the final amount. We'll add the vanilla at this point as well. Raspberries and vanilla, they have a, you know, we want to maintain as much of that, you know, fresh flavor and flavor as we can. So we add it at the last possible second in this process. So that's going to cool down, and it's going to kind of start solidifying a little bit. And at that point, we're going to take the mixture and actually put it in our extruder, which will extrude the little round pieces that you'll see here. And then we're going to cover it in our delicious Ethel dark chocolate and drizzle it with a little bit of Ethel milk chocolate. It'll add a nice little bit of milkiness, a little caramelized note, caramelized flavor there to the piece. So if you don't have it already, go ahead and pick up this guy. So I see a nice dark chocolate. We've got a little bit of milk chocolate there, drizzle. Lift it up to our nose. Sometimes with the dark chocolate pieces, with the coconut, you know, it was easy to pick up, but this one I can get a little bit. You know, dark's a lot more complex. It's a lot stronger of a chocolate. So sometimes you don't always get the flavor coming through of the center, but this one I do. I get a little bit of that raspberry coming through. Take a bite. Raspberry there. Chew. We get that tart raspberry coming in. Sweetness. Fruitiness. A little bit of perfuminess from the raspberry. And then kind of rub your tongue. Again, get that dark chocolate melting. Provide a little bit of bitterness to balance out that tartness, the sweetness from the raspberry. For a second bite. Some of that vanilla as well, but not too strong. We really want that raspberry to shine. The piece there. A little sip of wine. This one is actually, I think, one of the best probably pairings of the night. You got that really nice, jammy, juicy red wine. You know, and then again with that raspberry and the dark chocolate, they're going to kind of play back and forth a little bit. It's really, really nice. And then aftertaste, a little bit of the sweetness from the raspberry, you know, and then maybe just a hint of bitterness, a little bit of like mouth drying, maybe slight from maybe the wine or the dark chocolate as well. All right, capture some notes there if you'd like. And then I think we'll have another little celebration call out that we'd like to make. For Rekha Mahajan, the reopening of your family dentistry practice. So congratulations to you guys. Hope you have a wonderful weekend and hope everything is going well for you as well. Thank you for joining us. All right. Take a sip of water here to cleanse my palate, and then let's jump back over and kind of finish up that chocolate process. So I think we last left our beans. They were getting a little bit of a suntan there, and so we were drying those out nicely. We want to get all that, you know, all of that extra moisture off the bean. And now what we're going to do is before we, you know, want to use these beans, before we want to make sure that they've been fermented properly. So fermentation and one of the next steps, roasting, are the two really primary drivers of flavor and complex notes in cocoa. And so what we're going to do, we're going to use this little box here that you see. We're going to line it with cocoa beans, and we're going to slice it in half. Kind of do what I did here on the cocoa pod. And what we're looking for is proper fermentation. So you see in that photo, the two beans on the left, those are properly fermented. You can see really nice, even distribution of color throughout the beans. And the beans on the right, those are under fermented. So you can see there's still some of that purple that purple that you see there, they fermented a little bit, but not enough. And so that's not going to give us what we want in our chocolate. So we would reject those beans, and we would not accept them for use for Ethel M. So once the beans have been evaluated and we determined they're properly fermented, now we're going to bag them up. And this is when we're going to get them shipped to us in the United States into our roasting facility in Pennsylvania. And we're going to roast them very similar to how coffee is roasted. So, you'll have a light roast, medium roast, dark roast of coffee. Well, we're going to do the same thing with the cocoa beans. So for the dark chocolates that we're trying tonight, typically those beans are roasted a little bit heavier. You have a little bit more of a darker roast, hotter temperature, longer period of time. We want to develop more of those rich, those complex cocoa notes that you're tasting in the pieces. And so, that roasting recipe is going to be different than that of maybe a milk chocolate or a white chocolate. And so once the beans have been roasted, here I've got some beans to show you. Pick a few up here. So once you've roasted the bean, you see here the bean's been roasted there, and you'll see, this one's cracked, but there's this shell on the outside of the bean, and we don't want that. That really doesn't give us much of a culinary purpose. So we're going to separate that shell here and discard that. And what we're left with is this inside. This is what is going to make the chocolate. This is called the cocoa nib, all right? And this is going to break up really easily. So you just kind of just pressed it a little bit and it broke up in my hand. I've got some here that I can show you as well. All right, so this is 100%, really 100% chocolate. It's 100% unsweetened chocolate. I like to call them 100% chocolate sprinkles. You can sprinkle them on different things. They add a really nice textural note if you're looking for that. I like them on ice cream myself. But this is really what's going to be the building block of our finished chocolate. So we're going to take these nibs after they've been roasted and shelled, and we're going to grind them up. And because the cocoa bean is comprised of about 50% fat, when we grind up those beans, they're going to liquefy. And all that cocoa butter or fat is going to come out of the chocolate and liquefy really nicely. And now we're going to start to see what looks like finished chocolate. So if the beans are basically ground up, just the beans themselves, just the cocoa beans, the cocoa nibs, we're going to have what we call 100% unsweetened chocolate, or chocolate liquor. So there's no alcohol in the recipe. It's just an industry term that we use for 100% unsweetened chocolate. But we'll take that, and then depending on if we're making a dark or a milk or a white chocolate, we will actually add other ingredients. So things like milk, sugar, vanilla. This question came up last time, so I'll answer it now. White chocolate. So you might think, how do we get white chocolate from that? Something that doesn't look like white chocolate at all. So very good question. And we actually take this mixture right here, and we, under a lot of pressure, we will actually, in a vacuum, we will compress that and actually force out the cocoa butter from the cocoa solids, which is the cocoa powder. So cocoa butter plus cocoa powder really equals 100% unsweetened chocolate. So when we separate those two ingredients with pressure, we take the cocoa butter and we mix that with vanilla, sugar, milk, and that will give us white chocolate. And the cocoa powder, that might get used for another purpose, but that's not used. So basically, that's how you get that white, or something. It's not really white. It's more of like a yellow, I would say, color. But typically that has kind of a nice, just a kind of a faint aroma, more of a creamy white chocolate or creamy chocolate than a dark or a milk might be. All right, so once we've added, again, our other ingredients, depending on what we're making, white milk or dark, now we're going to do something called temper the chocolate. So what we need to do, because chocolate is really unique, it requires to be something called tempered. So we need to heat the chocolate up and cool it just very carefully under a very specific time and temperature curve, so that when it sets up, it has a beautiful glossy shine, you know, like these pieces here. They look really beautiful, almost like little pieces of art. And you may have seen, you know, if you've ever taken chocolate and melted in the microwave, or, you know, maybe it's melted in your car on a hot day and re-solidified later, you may have seen something that, you know, looked a little like maybe, and once it re-solidified, it might look kind of hazy or not too attractive looking. That's because the chocolate is now not tempered. It's lost temper. And so basically what that means is the cocoa butter, which is again, you know, when the chocolate's tempered, the cocoa butter is in a very stable format, so it stays locked into the chocolate. When it's not tempered, sometimes it actually will rise up to the top, and that's a lot of times what you're seeing on the top of the chocolate. And you can actually, if you rub it with your finger, you can kind of get it to come off. It's kind of neat. I mean, it's kind of cool to just, when you know a little bit about why it's occurring, kind of a cool thing to experience. But not the most delicious looking and tasting thing ever. But it's not bad if it ever happens to you. It's okay. It's just not the most desirable. It's not going to melt nicely, but really important that we temper that chocolate. And so that's what we do at FLM. And you can see here a photo of our enrobing belts. This chocolate has been tempered. It's being piped up into our enrober. There's a little hopper there, a little trough that is going to, that chocolate's going to flow down, and it's going to cover, we've got some vanilla satin creams there, but our raspberry satin cream that we tried tonight, that's going to follow the same process. Get covered in delicious chocolate. There'll be a fan that kind of blows off the excess, and then it'll kind of run off and onto our conveyor belt to cool properly and get boxed up into the beautiful boxes that you see in front of you. So, and again, another question came up last time. Well, where does all that chocolate go? The chocolate that comes down after it gets coated, or the pieces get coated. That's another question. So that actually gets recirculated. So it gets filtered. You know, any stray pieces that come off of the satin cream, that'll get filtered out and it gets reused. So we continue to make more satin creams. All right. So that actually is a little bit of an overview of chocolate, from the cocoa bean here to the finished pieces that you see in front of you. And again, you know, that last photo there, that's in what we call enrobing. That means something that's kind of covered in chocolate. Something like this piece here is molded. You know, it looks like it's got a nice engraving on there. And typically those are a little shinier as well. All right. Now let's move on to our next piece. This is our dark chocolate espresso truffle. This is this guy right here. Pick that guy up. So this piece, truffle, so the center of this piece is what we call a truffle ganache, or a ganache. And what a ganache is, it's really an emulsification or a mixture of cream and chocolate. And so what we're going to do to make this piece, we're actually going to make espresso. So we're going to make the espresso by heating up our cream. We're not going to make espresso with water. We're going to make it with our cream, which we're using in the recipe. So we'll take our fresh roasted espresso beans, we'll grind them up, and then we're going to heat our cream up and add those espresso beans and let them steep together. And we want to do that for over an hour to get all that delicious flavor into the cream that we're going to use to make our ganache center. So once we do that, we're going to strain out the cocoa bean, or the espresso fines, the espresso grinds. And then we're going to take that cream and we're going to heat it up a little bit more. And we're going to pour it over our chocolate and mix them together really nicely and gently to create an emulsification called ganache. That's really, it's actually very, very simple. We'll add a little bit more, maybe some of that vanilla extract as well. But because of that steep that we did with the espresso beans, that's really going to give us a beautiful espresso, primary espresso note in that ganache. So that mixture is going to start to kind of firm up a little bit, and when it does, we're going to take that and we're going to ball it up into a ball here, and then we're going to hand dip each in a little more tempered dark chocolate, and then hand roll in some roasted cocoa powder So we look at this piece, we bring it up to our nose, be very careful because of the cocoa powder. If you breathe too deeply, you might get a little in your nose. So be careful here, be gentle. Kind of breathe in a little bit. Some of that roasted cocoa coming through. Different than the dark chocolate that we were smelling a little bit ago. This is again that roasted cocoa from the chocolate liquor. Take a bite. And you get that bitterness. The bitterness from that cocoa powder kind of puckering a little bit right here. And then you get that espresso ganache coming through. It's gonna melt. Rub your tongue a little bit, and then the dark chocolate's gonna come in after that. Some more roasted cocoa, that bitterness will go away. Get a little bit of like toasted note even coming through from that espresso. Maybe some leather. You know, again, we talked about, you know, not necessarily a primary or a focal flavor, focal point, but kind of in the background a little bit. A little leather, a little tobacco maybe, you know, coming in from maybe those espresso beans. Coming in the background a bit. Really helps to kind of differentiate the flavor a little bit there. And then aftertaste, you know, some of that espresso kind of remains on your tongue a little bit. Maybe a little bit of chocolate as well. Take a sip of wine. Maybe another bite of the truffle if you have some. Actually, I think I like this more than the raspberry was a great combination, but this one I actually like even more. Again, just a little bit of that espresso, a little bit of bitterness from dark chocolate coming in. Maybe a few of the fruity and floral notes as well, but not too strong. Excellent. Hopefully you all enjoyed that piece there. Take a few notes if you'd like. And then I think we have a birthday to celebrate. Happy birthday to Jessica, 30th birthday. See, you've got a lot of great family members that wrote in here. Hope you have a wonderful night, wonderful weekend, and cheers to you. All right, so we've gotten to our last, unfortunately, our last Ethel M chocolate of the night. But this is, I think, one of my favorites, one of our best pieces. This is one of our most popular, top-selling pieces, and it's one of our original 16 recipes that Ethel created in her kitchen that we launched with back in the early 80s. And this is our dark chocolate lemon satin cream. So it's a nice, you know, again, that satin cream center. This is actually more liquid, but it's made the same way as we saw the raspberry. And then we add lemon puree, and that's what helps to keep it a little more liquefied, and a little bit of that invert sugar again. And then we blend it again. So we actually deposit it the same way that we deposited this creamy caramel here, using the one-shot depositor. So it's all kind of gets deposited at once. You can see here, it's really nice, beautiful. It's got a nice gloss to it. A little lemon leaf on top there. Bring it up to our nose. roasted cocoa again. Should be getting more of that citrus, a little bit of that citrus blossom or orange should be a little more prominent in this piece. And again, some of that, maybe some of that perfuminess from the lemon coming through a little bit. Take a bite, and when you take a bite of this one, try to again hear for that snap. So the snap is really important. That is one of the hallmarks of, or one of the key characteristics in really well-tempered chocolate. So on this piece, it's a little bit thicker, so should be really clear for us to hear that snap. That snap, that lemon center there. Right away, tart, not quite as puckering as the cocoa powder, but you kind of get it here. Tart lemon, sweetness, and then almost when you're like, okay, it's enough lemon, then that dark chocolate really comes in nicely and just kind of like envelops, really surrounds that lemon, really rounds it out really nicely and cuts it. Some roasted cocoa, bitterness as well, really just rounds it out really, really nicely. That tartness is now, very balanced. This is, I think it's one of the perfect 1 or 2 bite desserts. Get maybe some of that citrus blossom again, kind of enhanced by the lemon. Maybe a little jasmine as well coming in. Sometimes the lemon can have a little bit of a jasmine note. Swirl your wine a little bit. Kind of think about how's the flavor changing in your mouth. Go back and have another bite maybe.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
I'm so jealous. I don't have any of that over here, but it looks so good. I'm gonna start getting a few boxes. Hey, I know we're close to time here, and we have some questions that have come in through the tasting.
Sure.
So I wanted to run a few of these by you if you're ready for that. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just know we're getting close to time. Okay, hold on. I gotta get my glasses again.
I talk a little long sometimes.
What is the difference about the process between milk and dark chocolate?
Okay, great question. So going back to the roast, so typically the roasting of the beans that are used may be a bit different. So you may not roast the beans for milk as long as you would for dark. And then obviously things like milk and sugar, typically milk will be present in a lot higher quantities in a milk chocolate, and also sugar. So typically milks, I think, can be between like 35, not exactly sure, but 35 and 50, 45% cacao. Whereas darks are typically, they can be, I think, as low as 45 or so, but they can go all the way up. So typically milks are going to be a little sweeter. Our milk chocolate, we actually use something called the CREME process to make. So it's almost like a caramelizing of the milk and the sugar together. So it really adds another complex layer of flavor to the milk chocolate.
Excellent. Hey, really quick before I go to the next one, we have another shout out, a birthday sweet moment shout out. It looks like Jim Wayne received this tasting for his birthday. So happy birthday to you too, Jim.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, what was the first sparkling wine you mentioned? So I have a chance to write it down.
So this one is Rosa Regale. There are a few different brands. This is by Banfi, but it's basically what you need to know is Brachetto, B-R-A-Q-U-E-T-T-O, D/-AQUI, Brachetto de Acqui. There it is there. So like I said, there's half a dozen or more brands that you'll find probably in your wine wine retailer, but basically it normally would be in the sparkling wine section.
Great. Okay, Mark, what recommendations for fruit and cheese do you have to go with chocolate?
Oh boy, this could.
I know that's kind of a curveball.
Yeah. So I mean, normally, I mean, I don't like, I really enjoy like a lot of nuts and honey and cheese. I mean, there's one that I really, really like. It's not everybody's favorite, but it's called Epoisses, E-P-O-I-S-S-E-S. You know, there's another great one. A Mimolette is another one. It's a French cheese as well. But, you know, I think you just don't want everything. You try to pick something that's not too overpowering, kind of like your wine, depending on what you like. I mean, you know, you want to have everything kind of balanced. And so what I find is that, you know, just try to pick, you know, something that you enjoy, that you like, you know, and then if you'd like to as well, try something a little more adventurous. But, you know, it's hard to go wrong with cheese and wine and chocolate. So I would say just enjoy it. But yeah, those are two of my favorites.
Okay. Hey, Mark, there's a lot of people coming in saying they love the lemon satin cream. I mean, they loved all the pieces, but a lot of people love the lemon satin cream. Can you speak to what is in it, the lemon puree and what's inside?
Sure. So so basically we start the same way. We make our satin cream center we have sugar, cream, invert sugar, which helps to keep the center liquid, helps it to prevent it from crystallizing. And then we add lemon puree. So I believe it's a blend of lemons. It's Eureka. There's one other lemon that we use as well, but it's a blend of lemon puree that gets added to that, as well as maybe a little bit of salt to kind of enhance the flavor. Salt's a natural preservative that we use, and then a little bit of vanilla as well. Vanilla helps make everything a little bit, kind of rounds out the flavors in it a little bit and makes everything taste good.
Excellent. Okay, one more, and I know we're over time. We don't want to keep everyone on their Friday night. But I know you showed the picture of the enrober, but how do you actually cover the bottom of the piece is a question.
Very, very good question. That's actually very good question. So depending on how soft the center is, so we have some pieces that we will actually do what we call a double enrobe, where we'll actually have that conveyor belt that you saw that'll just put on a bottom. So basically that top waterfall or coverage of chocolate won't happen. It'll just kind of float along the bottom of the enrobing conveyor belt. And we have a small amount of chocolate there and it just gets a bottom. And then it will set up and go through the full enrobe, and that will cover everything. Now, that's for typically softer pieces. If the piece is firmer or like a nut has like nuts in it, it's a little bit harder, like a toffee or something like that. Typically, we don't need to do the bottom. We can just go straight through the one enrobing tunnel or enrobing belt, and that will do a complete coverage. What happens sometimes is if the center is very soft, sometimes it can kind of get stuck a little bit on that belt. So we want to do that first enrobe on the bottom to kind of cover that nicely, and you know, so we can get a nice even coverage of chocolate on the whole piece.
Excellent. Okay, everyone, that concludes our evening. We're so thankful that you decided to join us. There is a lot on the screen if you're interested in buying any of the pieces that you tasted, or maybe buying a tasting for someone in the future. You can get 20% off if you use the promo code VIRTUAL, all caps, VIRTUAL, and that offer is good through the weekend. I think June 7th is Sunday. So yeah, good through the weekend. We do have one more tasting on the books for 2 weeks from tonight, Father's Day tasting. We'll be sending out beer pairings. So if you're at all inclined and want to do that, please visit the website and sign up. And then also we are getting ready to announce a bunch more tastings through September. So we apologize. We've been working fast and furious to get those put together, but we want to make sure they're unique and different for everyone. So if you don't already follow us on social, please do, or go to our website and emails, because we'll definitely be announcing those that way too. So, all right, any last words, Mark?
No, I just hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. And again, I love having this opportunity to share my passion with all of you, and hopefully I'll see you guys again.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Have a great night and weekend. Thanks.